Our topic is financial planning and analysis and where Excel falls short. Joining us on the webinar today is Zachary Griggs, our financial planning and analysis practice manager at JMT. My name is Tom Thornton. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I'm going to be facilitating. Before Zachary gets in, I just want to welcome everyone. Many of you work with JMT already and know that we, in addition to working with Adaptive Insights, who's our FP&A software partner, we also work with Sage Intacct and Abila MIP, and a variety of other business applications specifically for the nonprofit sector. We think that in addition to budgeting and planning and management reporting being very important topics, we have a lot of things that we help nonprofit organizations with. And so just to kind of give you, those of you who are new to JMT, an idea of who we are and what we do. Everything related to your back office systems and processes are where we want to help your organization. So business processes, software, work with integration between applications, project management, and supporting you in all those things that you do. We help with technology solutions for not just accounting, but also, like today, we're talking about budgeting and planning, HR and payroll, which is human capital management, time and expense automation, and integration across all of those back office applications. So these are the ways that we help our nonprofit clients, and if we can help you in any way in the future, we hope to talk to you about it. Now today, our facilitator, Zachary Griggs, is going to be talking about one of those applications and how it can alleviate some of the issues that are associated with working in Excel to solve all of your budgeting and planning and reporting issues. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition it over to Zachary. Zachary, Sam, if you'll switch us over, and we'll let Zachary take us through the agenda.
All right, thanks, Tom. Just one second while I share my screen. All right. Oh. Let me start back at the beginning for us. But just to touch on a little bit about what Tom shared. My name is Zachary Griggs. I'm the practice manager for our FP&A practice here at JMT. I've been with JMT for about 6 years now. About 4 of those years, I was the director of finance, the internal director of finance at JMT. So I was on the other side of the table. And we had been using Excel quite a bit. And everything that we're going to see today are things that JMT and myself dealt with on a day-to-day basis at the time. And that's when we decided we needed a different solution, not only for us internally, but also our clients. And we ended up implementing Adaptive and then eventually reselling it. We began reselling about 4 years ago, and I transitioned into the role I'm in today, I'd say roughly a year ago. So in today's webinar, what we're going to go through are these 3 primary agenda items. We're going to talk a little bit about the Excel budgeting pitfalls. Then we're going to get right into the product, spend a lot of time on the different functionality that it offers to address those pitfalls. And then we're going to bring it all home by looking at the dashboarding and reporting to see what the output is of the system. All right, so we're going to get started with these primary Excel pitfalls that I am sure just about everybody on this call is familiar with. Anybody that works in finance today uses Excel to some degree. It is a very common product, but with its ease of use and accessibility, it also brings about a lot of things that make our lives very difficult on a daily and a monthly basis when it comes around any type of reporting or forecasting or financial needs that we may have as an organization. Specifically, it's a very manual process. I'm sure that there are many organizations out there that have Excels that are up to 100 sheets of different formulas and linking between them, and then you may have different templates that you're sending out to different branches of your organization. So any type of updates or data integrity reconciliations that you go through are very time consuming. It's not nimble. It's not going to grow with your organization and give you the confidence in those numbers that you need in real time. In addition to that, it's static. Because it's so manual, to be able to go in there and update your figures for your budget or forecasting or bring in any actuals against those forecasted numbers, you're not going to be able to do it at the speed that you'll need, or if you are, you have such a head count that you're spending tremendous expense on the manpower to do that in Excel, to accomplish that. Especially if you're growing into become a complex, larger organization, it's only going to amplify all of these situations that we're going to run into. Specifically within those 2 bullet points, reprojections and consolidations are 2 areas that are also a struggle with a lot of organizations. And I know at JMT, we had numerous departments, and each department would approach their template or their reporting or forecasting in a different way. In our case, our sales didn't look at it in the same way that our service branch did. So there would have to be a mapping between the 2 if I wanted to do any type of consolidation across those departments. For a nonprofit, that could be numerous programs or different departments or locations in which you'd have run into the same situation, where those individuals, they may have been looking at it in this one way for X amount of years, and then it's on the finance team's back to go in there and create this mapping between them behind the scenes. So again, tremendously manual and difficult to do, and overall time consuming. As an extension of that, your reporting is also going to experience those same items. It's going to be static. It's going to be difficult to do. You may only have 1 or 2 reports that you're able to put together on a recurring basis. And if you ever needed to run any type of monthly report, you'd have to go in, manually create it with your latest and greatest figures. And God forbid somebody went in and made an adjustment. You now have to track down where that adjustment is to then update your reports and recreate them in these massive Excel. So again, it's time consuming and it's not real time. And then the last is what I touched on earlier. It's siloed. Each of your departments, when they go in and do, or programs, when they go in and do their budget, it's rare that they're going to have access to see what the impact is holistically on the organization, or it might be difficult for them to see all the other departments, maybe the shared departments that impact theirs. Maybe you have some allocations bringing in some additional expenses, and it just would be difficult in Excel to accomplish that, to give them the visibility they need to make all the decisions that will empower them to help them grow those different programs or departments within the organization. So now I'm going to hop into Adaptive, and we're going to take a look at some of the functionality within the system and walk through how it addresses all of those pitfalls. So before I get into this, I just also want to note that you have the ability to put any questions that come up at any time into the GoToWebinar box. Feel free to put them in as they come to mind, and then I'm going to touch on those towards the end and address them. In addition, there's also a link in there if you wanted to download a case study related to Adaptive for another nonprofit that's implemented it in the past. That should also be available in that GoToWebinar box. Okay, so Adaptive Insights is a cloud-based SaaS product. It is available in anywhere in the world that you have access to an internet connection. It also supports multi-language, so whatever your local language is for any of the international nonprofits out there, as well as multi-currency. It also handles the consolidation of that multi-currency very well. So if you have different locations or, let's say, clinical offices that are in these multiple currencies and they want to budget in their local currency, you can do that and have it consolidate on the back end and take care of that for you. I also want to share that everything we're going to see today, as far as the different models, the terminology, the layout, the level of detail, the mappings, all of that is purely customized to your organization. This build is related to the demo system that we're in, but we're able to change and adjust and model it around what you do today and what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. In addition to that, the one area that I do want to highlight with Adaptive that I find to be one of the greatest strengths of the product is its scalability. I'm going to show you a couple models where if you wanted to just do some basic budgeting, where you're going to create, let's say, a statement of activities, and you're going to budget down to your different departments and accounts, you could do that. But if you wanted to grow it out and be more complex to have specific models for each of your different programs, you can also get to that level of complexity. Just to give an example of 3 clients that on the enterprise end of the spectrum that use the product, the Arizona Cardinals, Grubhub, and PF Chang's, 3 very popular names today. Even at that size, they're using this product because it's structured in a way that you can create it on either end of the spectrum. Whatever your complexity is, it can be accomplished within the system. So what I'm going to go over first is a little bit of the terminology within the system. So if I go in the upper left and I hover over this navigation bar, you're going to see this word sheets. When I say model, that's synonymous with sheets. And the way to think of those 2 terms is that it's the equivalent of if you had it in an Excel model. One of your Excel models would be similar to one of these sheets. And if I hover over this arrow, it's going to bring up a whole list of them. As I mentioned before, it's purely customized to what your organization needs. So in this case, I have quite a few, but I have many different things that I'm going to show in this demo. There can be 3 or 4 if you'd like, or you can build it out to be any number of sheets that makes sense for your org. In our case, we're going to start with the basic statement of activities. So once I click on this, it's going to bring us to another page. And on this page, you're going to see as your rows, you have your GL accounts, and they're in their account groups, and then your columns or your periods. But before I get into what we're looking at here, you'll notice that these first 3 columns are in green. And then after, from April onward, it's in black text. And what that's showing is what we would reference as versions within the system. And if I go in the upper right, this working budget box right here, if I hit this drop down, you'll see a few examples of those different versions. So the way to think of versions is if you took that Excel model and you hit Save As, and you saved it as a new version. That's what you're doing. But you're not doing it for one Excel, you're doing it for your whole budget. So at one click, you can make a copy of an existing budget into a new version. Now, that'll carry through all your formulas, your modeling, your data, if you'd like, or you can have it start from square one, whatever you're more comfortable as far as that new budget. The strength of this multi-version environment is going to be the ability to do scenario planning, also doing rolling forecasts, reprojection, and then what if scenarios. You can see down here, if I expand this, there's a few in here. So it's very common with a nonprofit. You go through your budget cycle, however long that is, then you have your board approved budget. You don't want those figures to change. You want to lock those down, you make a new Excel, and then you might use that at the end of Q1 when you're doing a reprojection. That's exactly what you can do here. You create your budget, and you can start from prior year budgets. So you're not recreating the wheel every time you go into your budget cycle. So in that example, you save your version. You'll notice that in this case, there's a little lock next to it. So I can lock down that board approved budget. I'd make a copy, and now that's my working budget. What you can do is make your changes in that new copy of the version without updating or impacting your board approved. So if you wanted to, as you can see here, these 3 columns are in this actuals version. And that's why you see that green icon here versus blue down here. So we're bringing in our actuals into this working budget so that they overlay for the year. So I have the first quarter is actuals, and then I have the remainder of the year as my budget figures to give me an accurate forecast on how I'm trending for the year. This will give me real-time visibility into how we are doing. So rather than just taking that one board-approved budget and then sticking to that throughout the year, I'm able to take a look at where I need to make adjustments. Where are we overspending? Where is our funding less than what we had forecasted? This gives you that live data without impacting that board-approved budget, so you can report on either, but you also have what we would reference as a continuous planning process versus in Excel when you have a static planning process. The next box that I want to highlight before I get into the numbers a bit more is this one right here. It says total organization. And just before I had mentioned that consolidations are difficult. They're a nightmare at times to do when you're in Excel. And this is how Adaptive addresses that. Now, if I expand this, what this is the backbone or the structure of your organization. And you can set this to be whatever you'd like it to be. It could be your different locations. It could be regional offices. It could be your departments if you'd like. In this case, it's a mix of some departments, as you can see here, and then also some programs. So you create this structure, and then what you're able to do, keep in mind we're in the statement of activities. So if I go in here and I clicked on animal welfare, which is one of my programs, and I'm just going to give this a second to load. What it's going to do, though, is it's going to bring me into the animal welfare statement of activities for this period. This is giving me the leaf level data related to this specific program. And just previously, I was looking at the consolidated view. That is the roll-up of all those different programs. So unlike Excel, where you'd have to go in and map all your different cells and your different Excels and formulas, you don't need to worry about doing that. The system is naturally consolidating this activity in real time. So if I made a change in here and I changed this 0 to be 5,000, that's now going to update my consolidated view. It'll only update it in the current version, so my board approved version is not going to change. I have no concerns about that happening. Now, if I had numerous entities as well, you could make this level tree much more complex if you needed to. You can see here that social good is broken out from association. That's a perfect example. So if you wanted to look at different stages in that consolidation, you have that flexibility as well. Okay. So, and you can see here when I made that change, that it's in blue text versus the black text. That's telling me that I haven't saved my change. So then I would get a prompt if I tried to leave this page. But I want to touch a bit more on the actual entry of budget values in this process. You'll notice that the layout, it's all cells that look very similar to Excel. All of us are comfortable for the most part in Excel. It's what we've used for years now. It's a staple in finance department. And that's what Adaptive took the approach of. They wanted to make their product user-friendly and have a look and feel of what we're used to. So if we go in here, and let's go down a bit to temporary help. You'll notice that this cell is white, and there's some blue cells and then some gray cells. The gray cells are locked down. I can't enter into them. I'll touch on that shortly. Let's focus on the blue and the white cells for now. So in this case, let's say that I knew that the temporary help was going to be, say, $9,000, and I know it's going to be that same amount every month. So I'm just right-clicking on the cell. I copy it forward. Now I've updated that expense for the remainder of the year to be $9,000 across the board. Just straight lined it out. Now, if I needed to, maybe I have my manager going in there and he has some questions. Why did this change? I can go down to this add notes option. I just put in my note, and then just like in Excel, you have that little red triangle in the corner, that'll pop up. So you're able to then make notes to other individuals within your organization to shed some light on why you made some of the changes you did, making it more user-friendly when it comes to collaboration. So what we're going to do now is going to scroll over to the right. You'll notice that this is all FY17, and then we have FY17 as a cumulative column. And in this case, it's roughly $104,000. But I know that I needed to end up around 110 for the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 110 right in the year. I'm going to get a new dialog box. And this is asking me, how do I want to spread that $110 across those different cells? Now, you can do breakback proportionate, which is going to take what's in there currently and just increase the values proportionate to how it's spread across the month. Now, you can also use breakback proportionate using the prior year. So let's say that you had actuals coming in for the prior year, FY16 in this case. I can use that as a reference point to spread my actuals in the current year so that my seasonality, if I know it's consistent, I can mirror that at a click of a button here. I also have access to do a breakback evenly, so I can just straight line that 110. If I'm a retail organization, I can use 445, 454, etc. And then if I go down here, the assumption, this is a very powerful aspect of Adaptive because what it does is it brings together the financial and non-financial metric to help you allocate across time. So what this is doing, so if I hit this drop down, is I have a few different terms in here. They're all non-financial terms: clinic days, patient visits, family served, working days in the month, etc. So what this is going to do is it's going to take my $110,000 and it's going to spread it based on whatever I select here. In this case, working days per month. Now, each of those on that list are what we would call an assumption. I'm going to show you that in a bit later in the demo, but that's where I'm housing my non-financial data. And it's a reference point for me where I can hit apply. And now it's going to take that 110,000 and it updates all these values. And you can see they vary in each month based on the number of working days in each of those periods. Okay. Now, if I go up here, I can hit save here. And we had made some changes here in temporary help. So I know that we have a note so we can see who made that change or who made that note. But what if we had a question of what was the value before it changed? So if I right click on that cell, I'm going to go down to explore cell. A second dialog box is going to pop up that looks like this. And you'll see in the upper right, it has a link to view audit trail. I can also see where that data could come from. These are other sheets that are referencing that account. But in this case, we're going to look at the audit trail. If I click on this link, now keep in mind this audit trail is available on every numeric cell within the system. It's a very robust audit trail. So if you go in here, you can see the exact time that it changed down to the minute. And then you can see the user that changed it. My name in here is the administrator. I can see what the new value is and what the old value is. I can also see historically how has it changed. So if I know that my programmatic staff are going in there and making changes, and I'm in finance and I want to just check on what they've changed, I can simply go in and take a look at these values. I can also run a report to see all their changes in one place. So I'm going to close this out. And what I'm now going to do is go to a specific GL account. And you can see up here, you have a search box. I can just put in, I put advert. You can see it's a part of the advertising expense word. It'll search any part of any numeric value or account name to find where that is. In this case, I'm looking at advertising expense. And what I want to do is I want to right click on this cell here. And you'll notice that in this case, I have drill into transactions as an option. So those green values, you can see that they're summary. They're just telling me what the account balance is for a given month. But if I want to hit drill into transactions, what I'm also capable of doing is bringing in the transactional detail that's making up that number. So rather than having your staff have to bounce between your GL and your account or budgeting or planning software like Adaptive, you'd be able to go in and bring it into one place. So they can just at a click of a button, get access to this list level of granularity that's making up that number. Now, everything, again, here you can customize what makes sense for how your organization looks at transactions. And you can also choose to bring in transactions or not for specific GLs. When you get into personnel-related GLs, you may not want to, but you may want to do it for your advertising expense or office expense. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to what level of detail you want to see. So I'm going to close this again. And now what I'm going to do is scroll up a bit, and I'm going to take a look at my salaries. So before I had mentioned that these cells were grayed out, and then there were some white ones as well. The gray cell means that you can't change it here. And when you think of the statement of activities, this is the base level of budgeting that is being done in Adaptive. You can also create a statement of financial position if you'd like with the same approach. You're just entering activity to the specific department, to the specific GL code, and then to the specific period. So very basic intersection of data here. If you wanted it to be a bit more complex, that's where you take it to the next level and you have different sheets that are feeding into this model. And that's what's happening with our salaries. So if I hit this expansion here, you'll now see that it's giving me, right, let's make this column a little bit bigger. You can see that there's individual employees here with their title. So Tina Rivera, compensation analyst, she's making this much money per period. And this is feeding in from elsewhere in the system. And I can right click and drill into where that's coming from. But in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open it up in another tab. So, and you can have any number of tabs open as much as your machine can handle of Adaptive, and there won't be any conflicts. So I'm going to go to Sheets again. I'm going to go down to my personnel sheet because that's what's feeding in that data. So on here, you see this is a very large organization. There's probably about 3,000 employees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my level. Just like before, I have access to the different areas within this organization. And I'm going to segment it to only look at animal welfare. So we can look at apples to apples from the statement of activities. Now, you may recognize Tina Rivera here, and as well as the others. All of those employees you can see are feeding in right from this sheet. And this sheet is what we would call a model sheet. It's just a different build, but ultimately it's just another tool that we have within Adaptive. Starting from left to right, you'll notice that I can put in the specific department or level that they work in. I'm then able to put in the name of the employee, their title. If I shift over, you can see you start getting into a few drop downs. In this case, if I classify them as a regular employee versus a director, etc. You can also get into benefits. Everything, again, here is built around how you look at your staff. I've worked with organizations that don't go down to the employee. They do it at a summary level. That's another option they have. You can also do it for temporary staff as well as vacancy. But in this case, we're just looking at it as every full-time staff individually budgeted. And when we get to this column here, benefits, now you'll notice that this is telling us the election, single married family. Now, the question I'd ask is, how does that know that this is going to equate to whatever the premium is for each of those elections for that employee? And that's where we go back to the assumptions that I was mentioning before. But in this case, these are personnel assumptions. So I'm going to go back into here, and just below Sheets, you see this assumptions option. I can hover over this, and I have quite a few in here. But in this case, we're going to go to personnel. And I'm going to right-click and open this up in another tab again. So once this loads, you're going to notice it has, in the health benefits section down here, it has in each period what the premium is for each of those elections. So if I go in and Tina Rivera has elected to be the single for this benefit plan, it's going to take in each of those periods that rate to populate my expense on my GL. It also takes into account her start and end date. So if she's not working, we're not going to have any expense for that. If she's not eligible for benefits, we're not going to have an expense for that. It takes into account all of that logic as well. I also made this just a single benefit plan. You could break it out if you did vision, dental, medical, 403B, whatever worked for your organization. You're able to do that. You can get as granular as you'd like. Also, it's very rare that fiscal years align with the plan year for benefits. So if there's a change at any point, I can go in here and I can put in that change. So at this point, if it became $200, I could go in and make that change. And now all the expenses related to this version, keep in mind, I'm in my working version, so my approved budget's not going to change. It's going to update the expenses accordingly. All those individuals that have elected single will now, as of August 2018, calculate at $200 per month as their premium. You'll also see up top that we have some tax assumptions in here, like a FUTA, SUI. You can break it out if you have employment in different states for numerous SUI rates. Same with workers' comp. You can put any number of assumptions in here to reference in the logic behind the scenes. Let me go back into the personnel sheet. When I continue along, you'll see a few different in here where grabbing the contract dimension. You can have other dimensions brought in. After that, you get to the start and end date. Now, these are important because they're going to tell us who's still employed at our organization. And as an extension of that, how do we plan for our vacancy? Because at the beginning of the budget cycle, it's very unlikely that you have everybody you're going to have at the end of the year employed at the start of the year. So there's two ways to go about this. One is you can hit this plus sign and you just add a new employee. And then you say that I'm going to have them start on 9/1/18. And you can put in whatever you know about them, what the salary would be, what the title would be, and then in the name, you'd put in something like to be hired. And now it'll account for that expense, and you're able to then report on who are my vacant seats at any given time. Now, the other option that you have is, let's say that Tina Rivera, we need another compensation analyst. So if I right-click on Tina, I can hit copy row. Now I've created a new row for Tina Rivera. And I simply need to go in and do to be hired, and then I would likely want to change her start date, 18. So it's going to now account for that expense starting at that time using the detail that I had in there from Tina. Another popular question or item that comes up with personnel is when you have employees that work in numerous departments. Very common. They spread across different departments, locations, programs, and you need to allocate them. You don't want all of their expense going to one place. So what you can do is, if we take a look at Francis here, and I'm going to right-click again, and I'm going to use what's called split row. And you're going to notice it creates two child rows to his primary record. And then in here, I can say that it's going to spread his expense 75/25. And let's say that he's in animal welfare, and let's put him in healthcare. Now this, and you can see on the far right, this time period is just spanning through the year. So if it changes at any point, maybe the summer months, you have some staff that are going to be spending more time in one location than another, you can adjust that. And each period will put the expenses, so the taxes, fringe, benefits, salary expense, everything related to personnel is going to take into account that allocation. And of course, you could choose to have certain ones not if you didn't want it to. You have flexibility. Okay. Also, up top, you still have your search function. So if you needed to search through anything on this sheet, you can do that just like before. And in addition to that, you have the display options. So right now, we're just looking at FY18. If you wanted to look at a lot further out, you can, either historically or forecasted periods. And then what's also helpful, not at this level because we only have about a dozen employees, but if you're at the higher level, you can use these filters. So just like you would think in Excel where you can choose this column filter by this, you can do exactly that here. Maybe I want to grab all of my individuals that have certain tier or election of benefits. You go in here and you just choose single, and hit apply. And you can add numerous. You can do and or statements if you'd like. Just about everything that you can do in Excel when you're sorting different pivot tables or database exports. So keep in mind that all of this detail is populated here, and then it feeds into your expense sheet. Before we were looking at the salary expense, if we looked at the benefits and taxes, it would also be feeding in from here. These controls are also, in this case, because it's personnel, it's going to be, there's a lot more control over it. If you want only your HR department to have access to this, you can flip that switch and have it so it's only limited to them. In addition to that, one thing I did not mention about the levels is that this also drives the permissions behind the scenes. So if I have certain individuals that only work in animal welfare, and I don't want them to see anything else, I would simply have their user associated with animal welfare. And it's not an all or nothing thing. So they could have animal welfare and then also youth, children, and education. So they can have numerous levels that they have access to. But when they run this report or the statement of activities, they're only going to see what I tell them or what I tell the system to allow them to see. There's a lot of control over who sees what. Now, as an extension of that for personnel, say that you had somebody that works in animal welfare, but you don't want them to see the personnel of the other individuals within that program. You can do that as well. So they wouldn't even be able to access this sheet. They would only see the statement of activities or any other sheet that I give them access to. And then let's say the HR department or upper management within that program is going to be able to manage this sheet and control what's happening. Okay. So that is, in a nutshell, the personnel planning. So next, we're going to take a look at a bit of revenue planning. So let's go back to our statement of activities. And I'm going to go to a different level. I'm going to go up here, and again, you have search function. I'm just going to put in 530 because I know that I'm going to take a look at the Pittsfield outpatient level within this structure. And you can see I get a prompt because I didn't save my changes, but that's okay. We're going to skip through those. In this case, I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to make that adjustment to the time period. So rather than 2017, let's get rid of 2017 and only look at 2018. This is just a filter. We don't lose the data by hiding it. We're just choosing what to look at this given time. If I scroll to the top, you'll see up in the revenue that this is outpatient revenue and it's grayed out. Same thing as personnel, but it's coming from a different place. I'm going to go into my personnel sheet tab, and I'm going to go up here, go to my sheets, and now I'm going to take a look at my revenue detail. Again, prompting me because I didn't save my changes. And you'll see that we don't have any activity because we're in animal welfare. So what I'm going to do is, again, 530, go to my specific level within this organization. And now you'll see that it looks very similar to the personnel sheet, but different content, different columns, but the overall look and feel is the same. So in this case, we're looking at an outpatient clinic, has different funders or insurance companies. And then as we shift to the right, you have the net receipt, the number of units or visits, in this case, to that specific location. Then you have net hours per product. It's giving us a payer mix based on the percentage of revenue that's made up by that specific product line, in this case, insurer. And then we get a calculation that is net revenue. You'll notice that this is grayed out. I can't change this. If I go in here and let's say that the Boston Health Net insurance is going to have a related net receipt of $30 and the visits are going to be a bit higher, let's make them $250. So previously you see that this is $500 and this is $37. I hit save. Those numbers are now going to update related to the changes I made. It's now going to take 30 times 250 to give me my 7,500 in revenue. And it's also going to update the payer mix. Oh, sorry, payer mix is related to the net hours per product, so that's not impacted. But now, the next question is, if I have $7,500, how am I going to spread that over the 12 months of the year or over the period that I choose? So that's where we scroll to the right, and we have access to, again, this time period, in this case, FY18. Now, just like before, if we wanted to go in here and we wanted to say just 10% across the board, and we know there won't be any activity in the summer months. That brings us to 100% of the revenue spread accordingly across the year. We could do it that way. Now I'm going to go back to 0, and now I'm going to put in 100 again. And you can see you have access to the same breakback as you did before. If we go down here, though, maybe we want to do it based on patient visits, because ultimately that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at the visits to calculate the revenue, so why not have it based on the forecasted patient visits in each given month, so we can properly forecast out that revenue. So I choose that as an assumption, and now you'll see it'll choose the percentages in each given period based on my patient visits. And I'm going to go back into this tab. I'm going to go down to assumptions again. In this case, we're going to go to the general assumptions. Very similar to the personnel assumptions, but different intent as far as what I'm putting in there. And you'll see in here I have my patient visits calculating per month. Now this is just a single entry of patient visits. If I wanted to bring this in on a per program or per location basis, I could do that. You can see there's other examples in here. I have working days per month in there. I can also have it related to anything with headcount or supplies costs. You can create the assumptions to be anything that has consistency across where you want to have control as far as how it populates within the formula, because ultimately you don't want your programmatic staff having to enter in a lot of those assumptions, especially when you get into the personnel items. You want that to remain in the hands of finance. Finance should be able to go in there and put in those calculations, and then it drives the formula based on the programmatic detail that they're putting in. So it gives you more control and confidence in the data. If you think of Excel and where you would go in and have to map different formulas, but then somebody goes in and they just overwrite a formula, that you no longer have that risk. You can see here, I can't change this. I also can't change it on a statement of activity, because finance has put in, or the administrators within this system have said, this is what the calculation is going to be. And then here's the detail, and you can give them access to see the detail if you'd like, and only control the areas that apply to them, that they have the visibility into to populate what you need. This eliminates all of that reconciliation process that you would deal with in Excel is taken care of in this sense, because you're able to go in there and preset these limitations. You can also choose in these columns rather than percentages. You could manage this via the actual units if you wanted to. That's another option that you have rather than splitting it that way. So you can have a lot of flexibility with the layout. So now what I'm going to do is segue into the dashboarding. So we went over a lot of how does the data get into the system, how do I have control over that data, and how does it consolidate. But now, how do we get it out? How do we put something in front of your programmatic staff or your upper management, your board, that they're going to be able to understand the true health of your organization in real time? And that's where dashboarding comes in. So I'm going to go back to my navigation bar. And in here it says discovery. That's synonymous. That's how Adaptive terms their dashboarding tool. So once this loads, it's going to bring us to the initial page that has a few different dashboard options. These are all ones that I've created. You can create what's relevant for you, and it can be, as you can see, a personal dashboard. So I'm just the only one that's going to go in there, or I can share it with anybody in the organization. If I wanted to have one specific to CFOs or the board, I can do that versus one maybe that's geared towards HR. I have flexibility there. I can also access any data within the system. So financial, non-financial, historical, future, any of that data, if it's in the system, we can put it on a dashboard. You'll also notice that we're still able to access the version. So we can look at a dashboard based on our board approved budget or based on historical versions or maybe what if scenarios. You can just change your version up top and it's going to update all the values within the system that you're looking at. In our case, we're going to look at a consolidated dashboard. It's a 360 view of the organization. Once we get into the dashboard, it brings us into this we have these sub dashboards up top. It's different tabs. So you can break it down into different types. You don't need to have them. You can have one if you'd like, or you can have as many as you'd like to add. Now, up top, you'll see that there's a little drop down here. If I hit this, you'll notice that I now have my levels. This is the same box that was on the right, now on the left. But if I go in here, and I hit this expansion, I'm going to go down to my animal welfare. If I change that level, I have now updated all my components to show me the values within that program. So I've been able to update all the data I'm looking at to a specific program at a click of a button. And if I ever wanted to go back up to that consolidated view, which I'm going to do, you just simply change it back. The same goes for currency as well. So if you have numerous currencies and you want to look at the values based on that currency, you would simply choose your other currencies. In this case, we only have US dollars. The same concept goes for the date. So if you want to look at historical or future periods, you can do that, as well as the version, as I mentioned before, all of which update all the components throughout the dashboard. So if we go in this dashboard and look at some of the components, if I hover over this one, you'll notice that in this line graph, I can go in and I can see what the period is and what, in this case, 5 million US dollars falls into that period. So you're able to hover over that and see the detail. This green outline behind the scenes, that's telling me that I have actuals through that period. And then after that point, it's all forecasted values. So you can mix actuals and forecasted values. You're also able to hit this drop down and adjust the time period you're looking at. You can lengthen it, shorten it, adjust it. You can also take a look at it at a quarterly or annual view if you'd like. If you switched it over to, if I go over here and click quarter, it's going to update. You can notice the component updates for me. But if I wanted to revert back, I just hit that default button, brings me right back to where I started. In addition to that, you'll notice that they have these two icons in the upper right. The three dots represent the ability to download an image. So if you're creating a PowerPoint or some type of submission packet, you're able to download that image at any given time and then just insert it into whatever local system that you have. In addition to that, you have this expansion option. So if you click on this, it makes it the size of the screen. So it's much easier to see, especially if you're in some type of presentation mode like we are currently. So now what you can do is you can still hover over your data. So in this case, healthcare, the programmatic expenses broken up in healthcare are just over $250,000, roughly 12% of my total expenses. Now, let's say that I know that there's outliers. There's certain programs that I don't want to treat like the others. So what I can do is if I go down to this key down here, and you can see on this 11% tranche, if I click on this and I click on another one, you'll notice that it's taking them off the component and updating my percentages accordingly. So I have a clearer picture of what those programmatic expenses are, excluding the outliers. So I'm going to close this. I also want to highlight this little camera icon up top, presentation mode. So if you are in some type of board meeting or presentation, you can go into here and gain access to your components, and then it lets you isolate one at a time for somewhat of a presentation, similar to how you set the PowerPoint. We're going to go back into the tiles. We're going to go over to association. We'll give you another example of different components that they have out there. You still have access to all the flexibility we had before. In this case, you'll notice that in this specific chart, it's bringing in the, again, actuals are in green. And then within here, it's showing you all the historical periods. So you can go as far back as you have data, as well as far forward as you populated data. So you can build out to whatever time period you'd like. Now, if we go into membership, in here, again, a few different components, but I want to highlight this one specifically on the upper left, membership. This is telling us that we have roughly 3.3 million members in 2017. So what I want to do is I want to click on this, and I have a few options. I can explore the data, which is going to take me to the root data. Where is it coming from within the system? So where in Excel, you'd have to track back all the different formulas to figure out what's feeding into this number. You don't have to do that here. You can just simply click that, and it'll bring up where it's coming from. What you also can do, in here, it's just breaking out the members by year. But maybe I want to know, how is that split between gender? So I click on this, and now it's taking this column, 3.3 million, and it's splitting it to tell me how many female and how many male members do I have, 1.6 roughly of each, slight variance. So if I click in here now, I want to click on the female members, and maybe I want to look at occupation. I can keep drilling down. You can see that I'm still just following the path of this data. And then once I get down here, you can see veterinarians, some nurses, biologists. Maybe you want to take a look at the veterinarians. And we can take, where are they located? You know, which states do they fall into? I'm able to see here, and I'm still in that same chart, just following down this path of data to give me an idea of where the female members that are veterinarians located. In this case, you can see California, Texas, and Florida make up the largest portion. And then when I'm done with that, I just simply hit back, and I'm back to my original component. If I keep shifting along, Cash analysis. This is an example of where we'd be able to do some balance sheet or statement of financial position reporting. Just like I saw the statement of activities, you can set up your statement of financial position as well. You can have different items mapping into it. If you wanted to monitor your assets, your capital expense projects, you can do that, as well as any type of depreciation related to either. You also can build out your cash flow. In this case, you can see that this organization is not doing very well in this component, but you're able to map everything together so it feeds in the data. And then one last tab I want to show is the personnel. This is bringing in that personnel detail from the sheet we had before. It's giving us an idea of headcount based on these different criteria, different types, as well as overall headcount. And then you can see the different compensations by program broken out in the pie chart as well. But down here, you gain access to a scorecard. The scorecard is going to tell us specific summaries or GL accounts that we'd like over different periods. In this case, it has 2017 actual, 2017 budget, and the variance of the two. And then over here, you have a little bit of a spark line where you can hover over any period, and they'll tell you in this case, October 2017, it's telling us just over 24 million is the expense for our salaries. And you can create, again, any number of components. There's many options as far as the different types of components. I just showed you a few here, but there's even more beyond that, different funnels and gauges, just about anything that you can dream up as far as a chart or graph you can create here. All right, so there's a few more minutes left, so I'm going to go into reporting real quick. Now, the dashboarding is great for that, for getting it out to non-financial staff. But at the same time, you also need a strong report writer to where Adaptive also excels. In this case, you'll notice that in here, I have the access to create different folders. So again, if I want to create personal reports, just a one-off, I can. If I want to create reports for specific departments or programs, I can do that as well. You could also empower your staff to create their own if they're comfortable. In our case, we're going to go into a statement of activities, and we're going to, again, go into statement activities changes by year. All of these are just custom built. You can build whatever in the system that makes sense for you. So in here, you can see it's bringing in numerous years of data, and it's giving us some current versus the variance from the prior year. So you can see in here, and then percentage variance as well. You can see here, slight change from 14 to 15 in revenue, and then we get into 16, 17, and it bumps up quite a bit. The one thing I want to highlight here is that you can click into the data, just like you could before. It's all linked, so I can click in here and I can drill into where's this coming from, what's making up that number if I'm looking at a summary level. And you can see the membership and retail dollars, and that's available throughout the report, so they're also interactive. And of course, you can export them if you'd like, or you can email them to whomever, whatever users you have in the system. And all of this, these are matrix reports. You can just drag and drop anything. So your columns don't need to be time and your accounts don't need to be rows. You can flip those. You can put in different dimensions, different programs or levels across your columns. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. And it's all live data. So there's no more manual updates from Excel spreadsheets. This is all pulling right from the changes that are happening in real time. Okay. The one last reporting option that I'd like to highlight is what we would call Office Connect. Office Connect is an extension that works with Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. So if you're creating a lot of board packets, and in Excel you may create them, and then if there's a change, you have to go back into it, update where that change happened, update your charts, update your graphs, and then put it into your new board packet. So very manual. This eliminates all of that. So what I'm going to do is open up my Excel, and you're going to notice that I'm just in this is my local Excel, but I have access to this tab, Office Connect. And I'm going to hit refresh real quick to make sure I'm still logged in. Okay. So this data, I'm mapping it back from Adaptive. And we're going to take a look at 2018, and we're going to take a look at this cell, D5, revenue for direct contributions. So I go back into Adaptive, and I go over to my statement of activities. Let's go back to animal welfare. Again, just giving me a notice that I didn't save my changes. Once I'm in here, I'm going to go to, let's see, go into our revenue. Let's scroll to the right. So let's take a look at January 18. So we had 5 million, but maybe we think we're going to do very well. So I'm going to put another 5 million into February. I'm going to hit save. been a material change within Adaptive. Normally, you'd have to go back to all your reports, back into all your Excels and PowerPoints and update it. With Office Connect, you don't need to. The formatting is whatever I need it to be. And I just go up here and I hit this button. That 25 million just became 30 million without me having to back up, go find where that came from. All the settings as far as what's feeding into there, you can see here on the left. I've chosen the filters and where it's coming from within Adaptive. There's no need to ever back into the detail. You're just pre-creating your reports right here. If you can't get the dashboards and the internal report writer to work, Office Connect is also at your fingertips when you have Adaptive Insights. So ultimately, you're able to create any type of report to get that detail out and eliminate the struggles that come along with trying to purely use Excel when it comes to any type of reporting and planning. Okay, so that covers just about everything I had on the agenda for today. I just want to check if we had any questions that we can run through in the last 7 minutes that we have.
Yep, Zachary, we do have a couple of questions, and I'm gonna do my best to paraphrase them to make sure we can get through them all here in the next 7 minutes.
Okay.
So one of the questions was really related to integration with the accounting system. So this is obviously not a substitute for the accounting system, but if you create your budget in Adaptive Insights, how would that get into Intact or any other accounting software?
Yep. So you can do it as data export import. Adapt is very user-friendly when it comes to getting data out and data in. That printer icon was on just about every screen. And just by clicking this, it ends up in Excel, and then you can import that into another GL system if you wanted to. With Intact specifically, as well as any other cloud-based solution that has open APIs, you can build an integration between the two. They have an out-of-the-box one for many of them, NetSuite, Intact, any of the primary cloud-based GL systems. You can have that so it's a seamless integration where it pushes your data real time into Adaptive, and it can get your budget also into your GL system.
Great. Hopefully that helps with that. One of the other questions was, do you have any recommendations as to whether you would make changes to your budget directly in the copy that's in your accounting software, or should you make all those in Adaptive if you're using that for budgeting?
Mm-hmm.
So
I would say
an example, I think, of making a modification at one point.
Yep. So I would say that you'd want to come up with an internal process that you're comfortable with based on how quickly you can get the data out of Adaptive and into Intact or your GL system. If you're doing it via integration, there's no reason why you shouldn't make it in Adaptive and have it push over. But if you're relying on, let's say, a monthly close where you're doing an export-import into the other system, then you'll want to make the change in Adaptive. And when you bring over the latest and greatest, you would then, let's say, if you were doing it monthly, you'd do it then. That's when you would be updating your new budget version within your GL system. You could also do that daily. I know personally, at first, we had been doing export-import from Adaptive into Intact, our GL system, and it took me probably about 10 minutes to get my budget out of Adaptive into Intact, and it was quite robust as far as how much complexity there was to it. But the system makes it very easy to structure the output, so it's ready to just import right into the other system.
Okay, great. And do you have any recommendation as to whether or not it makes more sense to do analysis and management reporting in Adaptive versus in the accounting system?
So that question comes up a lot with clients that consider Adaptive, and personally, I lean on using Adaptive because it is a hub for many different types of data. In your GL system, for the most part, you have financial data, maybe some budget data, but not down to this level of granularity. And you could potentially have some statistical, non-financial detail, but unlikely that you have a lot. So what Adaptive brings to the table is that it's a hub to bring in your GL activity, to bring in, if you use a CRM for any type or another system for membership, for visits, you can bring in your HR data as well at a far more granular level than you'd be able to bring into your GL system. So as long as you're bringing over your financial detail at a cadence that you're comfortable with, Adaptive is going to give you access to far more visibility holistically into your organization. Whereas if you needed to look at just transactional activity and just financial data, then you can rely on your GL system. But if you want to take it to a larger, broader picture, that's where Adaptive comes in.
Great. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the personnel allocation? So for instance, in the context of a grant-funded nonprofit where you need to allocate not just time between programs or departments, but also to funding sources, are there, can you elaborate on that, please?
Yep. So in this case, I brought up on the screen again, I had just split out one individual across 2 different programs. But if you had a bit more complexity to it where you needed to do it based on different criteria, then that's where you gain access to other allocation tools within the system. This is the most basic approach to allocations. If you wanted to create some type of logic, so one example that I like to use is, let's say that you had overhead expense, let's say rent, and you wanted to base how that's allocated based on FTEs across, let's say, different contracts and even departments. We do both. You would then have the allocation use the FTE count as a jumping off point for that to spread the expense in a given period. So it'll flow through and bring together all the different aspects of that equation to give you your, at the end result, on a per contract basis, per period, per individual, what that expense is. And if you needed flexibility on a per GL basis, maybe you have different districts. You're in an education nonprofit, education-based nonprofit, and you have different districts that have different allocation rules based on the expenses. You're able to then customize the allocation on a per level basis to handle that differently. So it's not an all or nothing approach. You can get very granular with how you're spreading it across your different contracts to remain compliant.
Great, that helps. One last thing, one last question I see here is, how does for personnel planning, how do you handle, accounting for the pay cycle? So if I pay weekly or biweekly, and those pay periods overlap the monthly interval that you show here, first of all, how do you account for that in the plan? And secondly, is there any accommodation for handling the end of fiscal year accrual if that's going to be in the middle of a pay period?
Yep. So in this case, this is a very basic demo where it's just showing by month. What's very common when you have different pay periods that fall into the month, you'd say in January I have 3 pay periods, but in February I only have 1 or 2, and so on. So you have the flexibility to have the expense spread based on the number of payrolls in a given month. As another option that you have that I didn't touch on in this demo or in this presentation was that rather than doing monthly budgeting, you could also adjust the time granularity. And that's something that you're not going to find in other tools in this space, but Adaptive just recently rolled out, probably about 6 months ago, the ability to budget down to weeks and days, as well as non-traditional calendars. So if you wanted to adjust and do your personnel planning down to weeks, but you wanted to do all your other planning down to months, you could do that. On a per model basis, you can adjust the time specificity within that model. There's a lot of flexibility to do that, as well as handling fiscal year. You can, in this case, calendar fiscal year, but you can adjust that to do whatever your fiscal year is.
Great. Well, I think appreciate the answers, and I think that with that we are right to the end of our hour, and so appreciate the great questions from everybody in the audience, and we thank you for coming to our webinar today. You're going to get a follow-up from JMT, just with a copy of the recording and a place for you to indicate if you'd like to get more information about that. So we encourage you to let us know if you would like to see something more personalized to your situation. And as always, you can just reach out to us at any time on anything, not just FP&A and Adaptive Insights. So thanks everybody for coming today. We appreciate your input and an hour of your time. So thanks so much. Have a great weekend.